with ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Kristina Conti, who joins us today on Morning Matters. Magandang umaga sa'yo, Attorney. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Gretchen.
Okay, tell us about this decision of the ICC. All 18 judges junked the plea of the Duterte camp and tagged it as wrong, untenable, and dilatory. Help us understand the decision.
So first, I'd like to kind of correct it to be more accurate. It's just 15 judges because 2 of the judges who were asked to recuse themselves did not vote, did not join the vote, as well as Betty Holler, who used to be with the Office of the Prosecutor. But essentially, they also favored the rejection of the defense's request. The request actually asks the judges, 2 of the judges, to mandatorily disqualify themselves in a sense, because the defense already lost the first request, which was for the 2 judges to voluntarily excuse themselves. The 2 judges said, well, no, because there is no indication of bias. Now, again, in this question for mandatory disqualification of the judges all in said that you cannot request this when there is no clear indication of bias or prejudice. And when you think of this would be probably statements outside of the proceedings, previously made publications, etc. But it is clear that the judges have not shown this kind of bias outside of the courtroom. The only quote-unquote bias that they seem to have made was during the same proceedings. Earlier, I think this was in 2021, they were asked to determine if the Philippines can proceed from preliminary examination to investigation. So in a sense, they were ruling, and the defense says this, on an earlier issue that also talks about jurisdiction. However, the judges said, no, it isn't exactly a ruling on jurisdiction. They just decided that there is enough basis to proceed with investigation. And although the issue of jurisdiction seems to be implied, it was not directly questioned. And so these judges, you cannot say that they have already prejudged the issue of jurisdiction.
So this time around, they will finally decide in certain terms on the jurisdiction of the ICC.
Yes, because at that time, these points were not in question. In fact, they were talking about the withdrawal of the Philippines from the ICC, but because this was a collateral issue raised then, it was not squarely passed on. It was not the main issue, it was just a secondary issue. And while it was kind of mentioned in the decision, it was not the actual issue that was decided by the judges at that time.
If the Philippines rejoins the ICC at this point, because that idea is being floated around by the administration, do you think that will solve the jurisdictional issue, or is it still different because of the time that is being investigated?
The latter. So it will not solve the jurisdictional issue or question in the Duterte case, because it talks about the time when the exercise of jurisdiction was exercised. When the exercise of jurisdiction was triggered. They're arguing that the investigation opened only in 2021 when we had left the court or withdrawn from the Rome Statute in 2019. Omitting that in 2018, the ICC had already opened a preliminary examination. So if we're talking of a generic investigation, the ICC has been looking into the case, into the Philippines since 2018. But if we're talking about the investigation as a proper stage, then we would admit that it only happened in 2021. But for us, if we rejoin the court, forward-looking, it will only be prospective and will only probably in this case take in the concept of cooperation, not the exercise of jurisdiction. We will have jurisdiction at the time that we become a member of the court again, and therefore the court can pursue cases for crimes committed after we become a member.
So that would
the
be 2025 onwards
it-
if we do
yes,
decide to join again.
2025 for crimes committed 2025 onwards. We've already lost the chance to prosecute whoever for crimes committed between 2022 until now.
Okay, but what would the incentive of the government be to take that route if that can be just turned around again in the next administration? Do you see us going that trajectory?
Well, could be, but it would appear would be one of the first countries to dilly-dally and to be wishy-washy about it. Member ba kayo o hindi ba? But anyhow, the minimum really is just to cooperate with the court. We've already started this investigation since 2018, and as admitted by the Department of Justice, it's the ICC which has gathered sufficient information about the incidents, and most particularly would have the capacity to process this information. To be frank, I kind of disagree with the Department of Justice that they've already lost the information, they don't have the evidence. It's there. It's all over these agencies. The Department of Justice, even the House of Representatives would have information. The PNP, they're just not cooperating. They're just not focusing. In fact, whatever information we may have given to the ICC must have come from these offices. It's just that we painstakingly collected and concentrated on particular issues or incidents. And so the ICC has the capacity to process, to analyze this information, considering their experience in other cases as well. So maybe with the Department of Justice, with our investigation system, we're just not at that level where we can grasp the concept of crime against humanity. For the ICC, it's easy for them because they see the contextual elements, etc. The Department of Justice has a lot of training on this, I know. But it's entirely different if you're training on paper and to doing it on the ground. So I would defer to the ICC really if it comes to an investigation on crimes against humanity, war crimes, and so forth.
We did ask about that. We had NAPOLCOM Vice Chairman Ralph Calinisan here. We also had General Torre here. And they say they're willing to cooperate. I mean, every time we ask them, sinasabi nila pumunta lang doon and kung anong kailangan, ibibigay nila. So you mean to say they haven't been cooperating?
Well, it could be because it's the Department of Justice that's in charge of the investigation. It's not their, technically it's the PNP. But they've failed on this task ever since. To be technical about it, the prosecutor will just collect information from the police. The NAPOLCOM comes in because you could refer administrative cases to it. So the thing is, what kind of information should we collect? Which cases should we talk about? So that kind of processing, it would come to the Department of Justice. And I think, to be frank, at one point, the PNP declined to give documents. During the time of the House of Representatives inquiry, the Quadcom, there was some sort of indication that the PNP will not be submitting this information to either the DOJ or to any investigative agencies. They did submit some, but not all.
What cards could they be holding close to their chest? I mean, anong impormasyon itong dinatago nila o ayaw nilang ibigay? At anong impormasyon ang meron sa ngayon na naisumite na sa ICC?
What information they might have, I don't know exactly and what exactly that they're holding, but for the ICC and for a case of crimes against humanity, it would be important, one, to submit police reports and to check if these police reports accurately reflect the incidents. What we do is ask for the victim's narrative or the point of view of witnesses and juxtapose those two narratives. Next, we check if there's any further investigation in the case. When we talk about the police report, probably, yung alam po siguro ng iba, yung spot report na, ito may namatay. But there are other types of police reports, such as progress reports, investigation reports, and so on. these reports would eventually unravel the full story. And another set of documents that could be important would be the SOCO report or the after investigation report, or something that will tell us what really happened during the incident. In most cases, these are missing, not done at all, or probably stuck in some office. So it's been hard for us as well to piece together the entire story. Kasi kailangan nung malaman, if you watch CSI movies, you have to be able to reconstruct the case, to reconstruct the crime scene. But it's been impossible with the documents that you have. For example, if you only have a spot report which says, oh, somebody came up to this person, tried to buy drugs, and then this person sensed that this was a police officer, shot back, and then the police shot back at them. If that's the only information that you have, then you cannot reconstruct the crime scene. That would have been important for the ICC or for any investigation agency to determine if the narrative of Danlaban was
Pero
true.
mabubuo po kaya yun kung walang report mula sa SOCO? Because sabi nga ni Secretary Remulla, they have nothing, no DNA, no ballistics, no crime scene. And kayo na rin po nagsabi, wala yung police report. So at this point, it is mostly testimonial evidence that we have?
Well, for the cases that we do have police reports. So I think they're grasping at straws. They're looking for a needle in a haystack. They need to focus on particular cases. I know that they've already looked at 52 cases. And there were conclusions about these 52 cases that police protocols were violated. They were also looking at additional 250 cases, so that should have been a total of 300 cases within the hands of the DOJ. But I don't know what has happened to these at least 300 cases. I think there's also an issue of identifying the cases. Kasi naalala ko yung 52 dati, wala doon kaso sa Quezon City. Isa o dalawang kaso lang sa Caloocan. So you have to be also methodical about it. And it comes from a recognition that these killings have happened almost everywhere and from a victim or in particular areas where the DDS were assigned. So from a victim point of view, you look at the places where the killings have happened. And if they were to do that instead of, because they gathered information from the police and then the police submitted whatever they had. Ang sabi ng police, ito yung available namin. Hindi, dapat idikta mo, ang hinihingi naming impormasyon, yung galing sa Caloocan, yung galing sa kaso ni ganito, galing sa kaso ni ganito. So that, when you tie up all the stories, so each of these cases should have had key investigations. When you tie up all the stories, you come up with a conclusion. Did the police follow the investigation protocols? Did ito in particular, DDS personalities show up in how many of these cases? Did the quote-unquote narrative of nanlaban happen all over and was copied in 7,640 cases as reported by the police in police operations? They need to be critical about this, and I think at this point they may have been overwhelmed or just simply deferring to the ICC because they've already had a head start on this.
Okay, so with the 6,000 number, those are drug-related deaths that they submitted on the first year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So now it's been updated to 7,640. We found that number during the Quadcom as submitted by the DIDM, deaths in police operations. Yung 6,252 kasi, as of May 30 lang yon. So,
That are drug-related?
Yes. Drug-related. And when asked, yung 6,252, at one point, this is the figure that they released for real numbers. If you remember, then Foreign Affairs Secretary, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano said, yes, they're all drug-related. They're all drug addicts. They're all drug suspects.
But last July 4...
information. And then there's the problem. They just give us numbers, but no clear information or the underlying database behind it. So that's problematic.
Okay. Last July 4, the document containing charges was expected to be filed already by the prosecution. Have you seen it? And what acts do you expect to be included? Of course, murder would be there, but isn't it a bit of a stretch to include rape and torture into that list?
Well, we've been told that the redacted version or the public version is upcoming, so we're still waiting. Probably today or tomorrow, because that would be the first day of the week. Um, it's not too far off to include the other charges, including rape and torture. For torture and imprisonment, I'm looking at the secret jail incident and hope that there would have been additional information submitted to the court as regards this incident. That's clearly a case of torture.
Okay. Super final question. With the interim release request, we've been hearing Australia, we've been hearing Belgium. What other countries are you seeing here that is possible to have agreed to host the former president?
Well, on the part of the victims, we would not like to speculate about the country. We're more focused on the conditions. Sino ba ang bansa na kayang ibigay yung hihingi namin? For example, ako palalayain siya. Kailangan nakikita yan lagi ng court. Ihaharap kung kakailanganin. Walang ibang makakausap katulad ng nangyayari sa kanya. Baka mamaya kung sinong mautusan yan na ganito, ganyan ang gawin. But for the countries that have already surfaced as educated guesses, there's Argentina, which has an agreement with the court as to conditions. There's other countries in Europe which has previously hosted persons that have been detained. They're talking about Africa, which has to step up. But in the end, well, these countries really have to be clearly cooperative with the court. Otherwise, we cannot enforce the conditions or we cannot ensure that the risk factors are addressed. But for us, hintayin na lang kaya ni Duterte yung September habang nasa loob ng detention facility. Total, 3 months na lang or ilan na lang, July o 3 buwan na lang.
Oo, payat na raw siya, ano? Yun ang huling update sa kanya. I mean, are you hearing anything on that end?
Duterte. Well, we're concerned as well because we would want him alive for the trial. Kaya lang ang narinig ko din namin, payat na kasi hindi daw maka-adjust doon sa either 1, weather, or 2, pagkain. Yung weather ngayon, medyo mainit na. So kung before, malamig, ngayon mainit-init na. Itong hindi pagkain, he could very well ask for rice. And I think I heard one time that the detention facility can cook rice as well, kumbaga the Filipino way already. Kaya hindi ko alam kung kumbaga bakit pumapayat or anong kailangan gawin, pero we wish him all the best.
Well, we shall await for the confirmation of charges hearing this coming September. But before that, the jurisdictional issues and the interim release request to be settled. But for now, thank you so much. We have ICC Assistant to Counsel Atty. Kristina Conti giving us updates on the latest from The Hague.
Thank you, Gretchen. Ingat.